Hi again then guys, and welcome to a revisited tuning series in a funny kind of way for earning huge amounts of very easy money. Now this particular tune is not necessarily better than something like the Porsche 911 GT3 RS setup. It's the same category, N400, use it for the same event, click down below if you're not familiar with this method. So this isn't going to be any better than the Porsche. This is just a tune for those who maybe don't want to use the Porsche. Maybe you prefer the Ferrari, and we're probably going to do a couple more tunes like this for people who like to use different cars, rather than just the 2 or 3 that I've already covered, like the GT40, the Porsche, and the KTM Crossbow. Now, of course, this does not earn as much money as the Crossbow, quite simply because the category is higher, N400. But that's not the point. Some people don't mind that for the sake of having an easier car to drive. So as far as the tuning, I would recommend dropping the weight as much as you can. Of course, you will need some mileage points to do that, so you could always do that after racing a couple of times. It's important though to lower it down into N400, the peak of N400 of course, as far as power. Traction control I would recommend turning off. You really do not need it with this tune. As far as tyres, we've gone for racing super softs for the maximum grip. I know some people like to use different ones on there, so if you want to try it, sure, but I'd recommend having them. As far as the suspension, we've got the front as low as possible and the rear on 105, because the 458 naturally has a lower back end than the front. That's not conducive to cornering on an oval circuit, so we've basically changed that in the opposite direction a little bit, so it's slightly lower at the front when you actually look at the car while it's racing, and that helps with the turn in. As far as the frequency, we've got that on 2. Anti-roll bars on 5, the compression aspect of the dampers we've got on 57, with rebound on 85, neutral camber and toe. Again, you really don't need it, even if you're a beginner. This is not a slippery car at all, which might surprise you. It's actually quite the opposite. As far as the diff, I've gone for the lowest settings on both initial torque and acceleration, and then the highest possible for braking. Now that won't work for everyone. It does make it more manoeuvrable, because ironically this is actually quite prone to being heavy through the corners. So if you want to change that up, you could take the braking down to say 40 or even 30, or change it up completely if you want to try something else. I tried a few different diff settings, and that was the one that I preferred. As far as the gearbox, we've changed the auto setting to 180 just to get through the gears a little bit quicker, since it's got less power now, and that's good enough. You can easily get it over 170 in 7th gear, which is more than you need, really. In the race, you'll never get much higher than that anyway, because the slipstream is weak. So that's it for the tune. Now, of course, let's take it out to the Blue Moon Bay race to see what it can do. Now, as I mentioned, this car is not easier or necessarily even faster to drive than the Porsche GT3 RS. I would probably recommend that Porsche over this one. In fact, it's still, I would say, the easiest of all of my tunes to use on this track. But this is specifically, of course, for those who like this Ferrari and who would like to use it, basically, instead of the Porsche. Now, as far as the driving style, as I said, this car is much more inclined to have heavy steering than it is to slide, which might surprise you, given that it's a mid-engine rear-wheel drive exotic. But the recommended driving style for this one is to give it a little bit of braking while you're still on the straight section just before you enter the corner, just to slow it down a little bit. You don't need to slam on the brakes. Allow it to coast into the corner, and then ease onto the power as you exit the corner. You'll feel very quickly, even as far as the first corner, how heavy the steering can be, and that will give you a good idea for the rest of the race. The only corner that you need to really brake a little bit harder on is the final one, and that's one of the reasons why it's not necessarily faster than the Porsche. In a straight line, the top speed is very good. As I said, you can get it easily over 170, and it's more than enough to win the event, even if you're up against stuff like the Veyron, the LaFerrari. I know some people struggle with those, so of course if you do struggle with this, you could try the Porsche tune instead, but it can easily win. I was in the lead by lap 10, so it's got tons of potential. So if you do decide to use this tune, and I hope you enjoy it of course, go ahead and win plenty of races with it. And if you'd like to try some others, I've linked down below all of the other ones, such as the KTM, which earns even more money, the Porsche, which is the same category, and also the GT40, which also earns more money than this, but of course costs a little bit more to buy. So that's it for the tune. Of course, there are plenty more to check out on the channel, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.